Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, we're back again on the Investigative Journal on this Thursday, July 20th, 2017 day on our calendar, and we've got about 21 minutes left of, this is a part 3 show talking about a funny thing happened. We didn't go to the moon, and we're going to finish up with Bart Sibrel. Please go and get that video. It's a documentary, and it's really well done. It taught me that we didn't go to the moon and to look deeper into NASA lies, and there are many. But anyway, go to my website at arcticbeacon.com, and you can get shows going back well over 12 years regarding the Vatican-led New World Order. But please press that donate button, because we're running a pledge drive and we need all the support we can to keep this listener-funded show going. So please help me out there. And to explain, if you go to Arctic Beacon, it's going to take you to my new site, which we're working on, called www.greganthonysjournal.wordpress.com, and you can donate right there. It goes directly to me. Okay, let's move forward. I want to play this by Bart Sibrel, but in the second half hour, I'm going to start an interview I did years ago with Lieutenant Colonel Dangerous Dan Marvin. Dan passed away several years ago, but what a story it is. And you're going to love it. He became a born-again Christian, and he talks about the follies in the Vietnam War and how he was almost killed for not carrying out a CIA mission to kill Prince Sihanouk of Cambodia and make it look like the Viet Cong did it. And the reason he didn't do that is because his quid pro quo, so to speak, was allow us to shoot into Cambodia, not allow us to get our military picked off like pigeons when they came down the Mekong Delta. They couldn't fire back into the no-fire zone. It's an interesting story, and there's much, much more. But let's get to Bart Sibrel. And a funny thing happened on the way to the moon. We didn't go. Here we go.
3 minutes after the hour, and a funny thing happened on the way to the moon. And according to Bart Sibrel, we never went. And Bart, let me tell you, if the caller, the amount of calls we're getting is any indication of the subject matter and your video, it's going to do quite well. Our lines are all filled right now. So if you're trying to call, just keep trying. I'm going to try to get some of these callers off the line so they open up a little bit. Call us at 800-313-9443. And Bart, I know you'll take any type of call. So Mike, you're on the Investigative Journal.
Your movie's great. I've seen it, and I can't remember. Does it cover the crater effect of the lunar lander? Because that's the most concrete proof there is, and I've done some research on that, of course.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting.
Should have blew out a nice big bowl of that talcum powder.
Yeah.
And from Apollo, I think it's Apollo 17, I can't remember, they landed, I think they were trying to imply that their navigation was so great that they could land within 100 yards or something of this robot lander that they had, and there's only a few pictures of the robot lander leaning against the edge of this crater, and it had bounced because the rocket motor shut off early. And there's only a couple of pictures of that available, and I can only find one copy of it. It's not on their website in their archives where it bounced, and between the footprints of the bounce, there's a little bowl blowed out like the rocket motor shut off early, but under no lunar lander do you see a bowl of dust blown out from that rocket motor.
Yeah. Would you mind sending me a picture of that? Send it.
Well, it's in my ex-mother-in-law's encyclopedia set, and I'm not going to say what brand it was. It was a brand of encyclopedias, and they bought the yearbook, and the pictures were in the yearbook, but it's not in. I've been on a quest to find a copy of that for 10 years, and I can't find it.
The fact is, to listeners out there, you should write your congressperson and insist that there be an investigation into Apollo. he's right. The caller's right.
You know, and the fact is also, one of the points we're overlooking right here, and I'm going to get to Gary, Lance, and Alan, just hold on. One of the points we're overlooking is all the money that's been wasted and spent and greedily taken by these corporations who are profiting from this falsity.
None of that funding was tied to silver. They demonetized silver in the mid-'60s, and then now we've completely debauched the currency because they spent billions of bucks they didn't have.
Now, Bart, well, tell us about that, what these government contractors you found out did.
Well, basically, our film, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. Okay, every listener can go to moonmovie.com and read about our extravaganza. The film cost $500,000. So far, we've recouped $150,000. So we've lost 2/3 on the film so far. And yet, even though some of our anonymous investors are true patriots like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, we even codenate them, with their founding fathers.
What's that?
For example,
you know something? When you mention George Washington and John Adams, I'm just gonna put quotations around those people that's for another time. But go ahead.
For example, they spent 10 years ago $5 billion.
That's with a B, right? 5 billion.
5 billion. 10 years ago, NASA spent $5 billion mapping the planet of Venus. Now, actually, it was a map geographically better than the planet Earth, where we all live.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the average temperature on Venus is 800 degrees Fahrenheit, and lead becomes liquid,
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm like, okay, why don't you just load up a briefcase with $5 billion in cash and catapult it into the sun? It's a waste of money. But my executive producer, which is a true patriot and who knows the moon landings were fake, says, well, it provided jobs for all those people. And I'm like, wait a minute. He's kind of right. He's right.
Yes.
They're $5 billion that's 100,000 people with wives and families and swimming pools and suburbs and whatever who are providing for their children. Now, Kennedy, in the most recently released tapes, said that he regretted setting the goal to go to the moon. He wished he had spent the money to desalinate water in the entire continent of Africa. Now, there are 7 continents. 6 are inhabitable, right? And in one of them, he could have desalinated drinking water for the entire continent of Africa for the same cost of planting a flag on a dead rock, which they didn't even do, you see.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. We don't spend our money in the right places. But let me take a call anyway. Gary in Tennessee, you're on the Investigative Journal.
Yeah, I want to talk about the photo thing first, but I want to talk about the fake moon rocks after I get off the air. How many missions were supposedly take place, and how many astronauts were involved in all those missions? Do you have that number?
That's a great question. There were 6 missions to the moon.
And one failed?
And there were, that's the most disgusting of all the missions.
That's a cover-up, yeah.
Apollo 13 was the most disgusting of all the missions.
That's a cover-up in the movie.
Yeah. On Apollo 12, the previous caller before you, he noted the lack of crater under the moon landing. All of the Apollo 12 pictures, if you get them from NASA, you can still get them.
How many astronauts were involved?
3. If you get all of the Apollo 12, the crater is hidden. They put a ridge of dirt above the crater so you don't see the crater underneath it. It's super clever and also super obvious. You never see the dirt underneath the lander on Apollo 12. And then, you see, here's the thing. They had a color video camera right? And yet they only showed black and white on the first mission. Then on the second mission, the astronaut accidentally pointed the camera at the sun. So the second mission only had color TV pictures for a minute and a half. The third mission wasn't done. So they had 2 years. And the weird thing is, 2 years. They had 2 years between the first mission and the faking. The Apollo 13 was the most disgusting of all the moon missions, because after they went to the moon the second time, people were telephoning the networks complaining that reruns of I Love Lucy were being interrupted. So they introduced an element of jeopardy and danger to draw attraction to the jeopardy and the drama of the moon missions.
One more quick thing. I'm a photographer, and by no atmosphere in the moon, and the doctored stuff, as you know, we can do today. We can doctor so many photographs. I feel a lot of those were doctored photographs of the flag that was waving, the flag that was still, and again, the fake moon rocks they supposedly brought back, they're all fake anyway. But one more last question, I'll get off. How many astronauts were involved? We know we have the 6-7 missions. How many different ones were there? I know.
That's a very specific and good question.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Thanks.
Go ahead. So wait a minute, let me answer this.
Go ahead and answer. He'll be off the air, but he'll hear. Go ahead.
Okay. So Gary, we have Apollo 11, right? Then we have Apollo 12, Apollo 14, 15, 16, and 17. Those 6 missions, right? Times 2, that's 12 moon rockers. But you have to add 3 to each one who knew what was going on. So that's about 18. And I've met with 9 of them. So I've met with nearly 3/4 personally.
Did you meet with any of the first guys, Armstrong? And
I've met with all 3 of them.
Okay. Tell us their story. What did they tell you?
Well, off the record.
Well, whatever.
On the record or on the record. Basically, they know that I know. They know that I know. And most of them, hope the truth won't come out. But there's a few of them that think the truth might come out. And they know that I know. And they know it's an uphill battle. I mean, after all, I'm the guy who says the moon landings were done in a television studio. I mean, come on. That sounds nutty. That sounds stupid. That sounds crazy. That sounds like a conspiracy theorist. I mean, surely. The moon landings were fake. They were done in a television studio. I mean, that sounds nutty. And yet, like Paul, I was the most convinced that they were real, and that I was converted to believing that they were fake. The fact is they were fake. The fact is the moon landings were fraudulent. I bet my life on it.
Now, you said that you talked to 9 of these 18 astronauts, and some of them know, and others intimated that they didn't go. Is that right?
That's in Astronauts Gone Wild. Have you seen Astronauts Gone Wild?
No.
Oh, well, hell, we'll have to send you a free DVD and have you.
All right. Is that one of yours, too?
Yeah, we just produced Astronauts Gone Wild.
Well, send me a DVD, and we'll take care of that.
Send me an email, and I'll send you an email.
I will do that. I will do that.
Yeah, you didn't see The Punch on Jay Leno?
No, I don't watch much TV anymore.
Well, basically, I was on Jay Leno 2 nights in a row.
Fantastic.
When I asked an astronaut to swear in the Bible that he walked on the moon, and he punched me on the face. You don't know about this?
No, I'm in the dark on that.
Pretty famous little picture.
Fantastic. And who punched you?
Buzz Aldrin.
Oh, now I remember hearing about that. I didn't realize it was you.
Yeah.
The famous guy punched by the astronaut.
Well, we'll have to give you Astronauts Gone Wild and do a follow-up interview.
All right, so we got astronauts talking to you off the record that they didn't go. What about this guy Armstrong? Is he ever going to come? He looked like he was going to cry the last time he gave the speech about
one of the most special moments of a funny thing happened on the way to the moon.
Right.
Which you can get is his remarks on the 25th anniversary. Now, to me, you saw them, right?
Oh yeah, they were strange.
They're pretty remarkable, aren't they?
It's almost like he's saying maybe the truth will be told one day.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable.
I find it also interesting, this famous man never giving any interviews.
Yeah, he gave his first one to 60 Minutes like a week ago.
over the 25 to 30 years the guy was in.
An interview. He hadn't given one interview in 37 years.
Right. And that just goes to show you he doesn't want to lie in public about it.
That's what I think.
What else could it be? I mean, if I went to the moon realistically and I was the first person to walk on there, I can tell you what, I'd still be giving interviews right now.
You better believe it. You'd be a spokesperson for the greatness of the United States of America.
Exactly, and I'd be up there telling you exactly what it looked like, exactly what it felt like. But then some of the questions he was even asked afterwards, he was very, very standoffish.
Yeah. You just gotta see. You just gotta go to moonmovie.com and see that clip. You know the clip that I'm talking about, the clip that you saw where he says truth protected layers.
Right.
I feel so blessed to even have access to that clip. I was working at an NBC news affiliate, and I had to record it that day, and it was like, it's unbelievable.
Hey, let me get a caller here. Lance, you're on the Investigative Journal.
Yeah, very good. Listening to you on 90.1 Austin Free Radio down here in Texas.
Fantastic.
Very interesting subject today. I wanted to say I'm a patriot and glad to be with you. A couple of pieces of evidence that they did go to the moon that I have never been able to sort out or identify are, first, they deployed the 6 missions that landed, deployed ALSEP packages. An ALSEP package is an Applied Lunar Science Experiment package. They put out telemetry on earthquakes, surface temperature, sunlight, and whatnot on 5,000 megahertz, which is 5 gigahertz, and beaming it back at Earth constantly. So what we've got is you can get a 14-foot dish and the right receiver, and you can tune in, I believe, 5 of the 6 deployed ALSEP. They're still up there. Now, that could have been done robotically. They could have been robotic landers. But the significance is there are radio signals on 5 gigahertz coming off of the moon that are quite strong. They don't record and monitor them anymore. They don't have the funding for it, but the packages are still up there. They have nuclear batteries. That's what they're running on. Secondarily, I'm an amateur radio operator, a ham operator. I've talked to a number of hams in the Houston area who are longtime technicians. Some of them have worked at They had receiving sets at their house that could pick up the 2,252 megahertz voice comm on S-band off the dish, off of the orbiter on each of the moon missions. And I don't understand how you can fake, a 20-watt S-band signal off out of lunar orbit. Your dish is either pointing at the moon or it's not. Microwaves travel in a straight line. So do you have any comments on these radio signals coming off the moon, particularly from the command modules that a number of people have received during the missions? Go ahead.
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, it's much easier to fake than people imagine. They actually sent unmanned probes to the moon. They sent 3 unmanned probes to the moon. One, they sent a moon rover in 1968 that was sent to put the laser reflectors on the moon. So they put mirrors on the moon, which are actually on a remote-controlled moon rover, that made it look as though the laser reflectors were on the moon. Mm-hmm. And they also sent an unmanned probe to the moon to retrieve lunar samples to mimic the lunar rocks that were from the moon. The fact is, this footage that we uncovered, you don't understand. We have Neil Armstrong on camera faking a shot of being halfway to the moon. Now, what that means is, if that Neil Armstrong could not go halfway to the moon, which means Neil Armstrong never left Earth orbit, which means all of the missions had the exact same equipment. So if you're, microbus Volkswagen Bug can't go 500 miles an hour, mine can't go 500 miles an hour. So we know that all the missions were faked. We know they never left Earth orbit. And they sent unmanned probes to the moon to relay these mirror images, which the Soviets had done in 1967.
So they relayed the radio traffic from lunar orbit or wherever back to Earth, and it would appear to be coming from the moon.
That's it exactly.
Fantastic. I even understood that. And that is you guys did a good job when I can understand something like that. You're listening to the Investigative Journal. We'll be back with our final thoughts with Bart Sabrell, who's talking about a funny thing happened on the way to the moon on the Investigative Journal.
Introducing the world's best air purifier, the Aeronizer.
54 minutes after the hour, we're back for our final 3 or 4 minutes with Bart Sabrell, and funny thing happened on the way to the moon. I'd like to make a comment on this. What I find interesting is that, you made a believer out of me, Bart. I mean, this tells me two things. One, there's a lot still to be uncovered about this story. A lot of things still need to be done. A lot of people need to be talked to, and I hope you keep up on it. In fact, anybody out there that can lend information, we'd love to get to the truth. And I think, Bart, you've opened up a door here that's not going to close. Secondly, I think, maybe it's a good thing. We have accomplishments yet. Let's admit that we didn't go, and let's get on with trying to get there. I mean, I have no qualms about going to the moon, or I think it's money, in fact, money well spent, because there are a lot of things out there that we don't know about that I think we should. And so let's get on with, what do you think of that thought? You there?
Well, I would say this. In recently released John F. Kennedy tapes, he said that he wished he had not set the goal to go to the moon. He said he had wished that he had set the goal to desalinate water for the entire continent of Africa.
And I respect your opinion. I think what you're saying, and I can maybe explain that quickly, is that you think the money should be spent here before we spend it in space. But let me take one caller. We got another caller here. Alan, you're on the Investigative Journal in the final seconds here, so make it quick.
Sure, I'm just sitting here on your website ordering some of these videos, and I've been skeptical about this whole thing since 1978 when I saw the movie Capricorn 1. Do you think the people that made that fictional movie had the same thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that film was based on my source, Bill Casings. We've done part 1, which is called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. Which contains the secret footage. We've done part 2, Astronauts Gone Wild. That includes me being punched for asking a guy to swear in the Bible.
Okay, those are the 2 I'm ordering today.
Then we do part 3, which you can see at moonmovie.com, and this is still in production, where we have the father of the moon landing, not his son or grandson, and he's the one who worked there for 6.5 years, who knew we did not go.
When are you going to finish this third one?
Well, I'd say if you go to moonmovie.com, we'll have trailers of the third one probably within a year.
Okay. Now tell people real quickly, thanks a lot for calling.
Thank you.
Tell people real quickly, Bart, in the last minute here, how they can get a hold of these videos. I really would like people to see them.
Yeah, just go to moonmovie.com, and you'll see the samples of the videos. Now, they're $30 each. Ooh, $30. It's $10 more than you pay at Blockbuster, but we spent $500,000 making the first movie, and we've made back maybe a third of it.
Right.
But you get to see the secret footage. The secret footage is in the film for $30 whole. You get to see secret footage of Neil Armstrong faking part of the moon mission. And the fact is,
amazing. I mean, did you ever ask him about that?
Okay, so we're all out of time here in 2017. We'll be back on the Investigative Journal after these short messages here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, that was quick. We're back on the Investigative Journal in this second half hour. Hope you enjoyed that interview with Bart Sibrel. A funny thing happened on the way to the moon. Go to moonmovie.com. You can still watch it. It's really worth it. And I'm going to go, I've got so many videos, I don't know where they are right now, but I'm going to put one in and watch that again tonight. I watched it yesterday, and I've watched a little bit of it, and I'll finish it up tonight. I want to play in this half hour an old interview I did with a good friend who passed away several years ago, Lieutenant Colonel Dan Marvin. He taught me a lot about the Vietnam War, what was really going on behind the scenes. And the interesting thing about Dan is that he was a Green Beret assassin. And in his later years, he became a born-again Christian and started to tell the truth. And we'll get to Dan in a second. Another thing I took from that first half hour, just a personal note, was that so interesting when you look back 12 years or so, and you see all these people listening to the radio. I was on all of these AM, FM stations. But once you talk about the Vatican, forget about it, as they say in New Jersey. And people out there, do you think it's worth it? Do you think it's worth it? I'm questioning that tonight. But anyway, I think we should get to Lieutenant Colonel Dan Marvin. I think you'll like this story. Okay, here we go.
With a very courageous man, a Lieutenant Colonel Dan Marvin. Dan's going to tell us an interesting story regarding the Kennedy assassination, his involvement as a Green Beret, and other assorted assassination attempts by our government. In the second half hour, I have on a courageous hero and a doctor from New York named Lisa Apteker, who went to New Orleans and spent almost 3 weeks there, saving many lives, went on her own, arrived, I should say, before our government arrived, and she'll be talking with us about that experience, as well as I'm going to bring on Nicole Thomas. She's now in a hotel outside of Atlanta, and she's going to tell us about her experience at Hurricane Katrina, how she's been abused by the government, and how her 30 family members are crowded in a small hotel in Atlanta, still looking for a place to live. So without any further delay, let's get to Lieutenant Colonel Dan Marvin. Are you there, Colonel?
I certainly am, and pleased to be.
Well, you know something? It's a pleasure. I've had a chance to interview you on several occasions and find your story fascinating. And let me just intro it a little bit so that people know. First of all, you volunteered the day Kennedy was assassinated to become a Green Beret. You were then asked at one point before going to Vietnam to be involved in a killing of a Lieutenant Colonel Pitzer.
Commander. Right.
What's that?
Lieutenant Commander.
Lieutenant Commander Pitzer, excuse me, who had some vital information regarding the Kennedy assassination, which you then turned down. Then you went to the Green Berets, have a story to tell there about something that happened, very important story. And then you came back, tried to publish your book, and have had it basically censored. It took you 15 years to get this published. Now you have it published, and you're getting sued by the Pentagon. So let's go back to the beginning of the story, right after the Kennedy assassination and your involvement with Lieutenant Commander Pitzer's story.
And I volunteered to be a Green Beret the day that Kennedy was assassinated, because he was, my very best friend was a Green Beret, and they just all thought the world of him, and I admired him. And I went through training in the spring of 1964, graduated from the two different officers' courses at Fort Bragg. During the second course, we were taught by CIA instructors in a special building that was surrounded by barbed wire and even a couple of guard dogs, and they taught us assassination, terror, and industrial sabotage techniques. The most interesting thing that I learned there, because I'd been involved a little bit in some scrapes in Southside Chicago as a young man at 12 years old. I had my own gang fighting a high school gang, and we used crossbows. But anyway, the most interesting thing to me was that they intimated, the CIA instructors, that it was us, the United States government, that killed John F. Kennedy. They even explained to us that there was 4 mafia hitmen involved in it. Well, I knew from earlier training there in that same school that the mafia was used by the CIA in stateside assassinations, and that they would train us, Green Berets, to do assassinations overseas. In August of 1965, a lot of things happened in between that don't relate to assassinations necessarily. In August of 65, on the 6th day, Colonel C.W. Patton, my commanding officer, called me up to the headquarters and told me to report to a company man. That's what we call the CIA men, that and spooks. To meet him out underneath the trees, and I did. I was joined by Captain David V. Vanek, and we went to about 40 feet from that seat.
Colonel Marvin, hold that. We're going to get right back to that meeting you had with the company right after this break on the Republic Broadcasting Network. This is the Investigative Journal. The Investigative Journal. I'm Greg Szymanski, your host. I have with me Colonel Dan Dangerous Marvin, as he's known, who was a government assassin. He's here to tell us a story regarding
things regarding the Kennedy assassination. Dan, can you pick up where you left off when you were at this meeting with the company man?
Certainly, Greg. We got to within about 40 feet of him, and I went ahead and left David just standing there. And the CIA man asked me if I'd like to accept a mission, and I think I ought to let the people know that are listening that all covert operations, at least in the 60s, were voluntary. Any assassinations or terrorism or sabotage that you were asked to do, you were asked to do. You didn't have to do it, and you volunteered. But once you volunteered, then it was yours to do. He asked me if I'd volunteer to...
Dan, can I break in 1 second, Colonel?
Yeah.
I always meant to ask you this. So let's say you don't volunteer. What would happen to you if you talked about it?
Oh, you don't. You don't. Normally, they're very careful about when they ask you to do something. They don't give any names or places or anything until you accept the mission.
Okay.
In this instance, I accepted the mission. He asked me if I would kill a man who was about to give state secrets to the enemy. Well, who wants people running around giving state secrets to the enemy? I was, fighting for the flag then, and I was on orders for Vietnam. And the way it would work is we would get the missions overseas. We'd go on regular routine orders. When we get there, then we'd leave, be dropped from the rolls, do the job, get back, and then be picked back up again. So I volunteered for it, thinking it would be someplace I'd go to from Vietnam. And then I asked where it was, who it was and where it was, and he said it was a Lieutenant Commander William Bruce Pitzer, and he was at Bethesda Naval Hospital. And I said, no, I don't do that sort of thing. I said, I got a wife and 3 children right here at Fort Bragg, and I don't want to be dropped from the rolls today to go do a mission like this. So I said, that's a job you're supposed to give the mafia in this country. And there must have been some problem with them, the mafia at that time. So I said no, and I left, and that was it as far as I was concerned until 1993, when I saw a special on television about the Kennedy assassination. And at the end of the special, here rolls the name Lieutenant Commander William Bruce Pitzer. And I thought, Lord have mercy, I thought this guy was an enemy about to give state secrets to the enemy. Well, it turns out I found, through a friend of mine, his widow, and talked to her, and it turns out that he had the photos of the real autopsy of President John F. Kennedy. He had those in his hand. A man named Dennis David, who I just spoke to here not too long ago, had been his friend for years. He actually stood right next to William Bruce Pitzer and saw the real autopsy photos of the Kennedy assassination, which would disprove the Warren concept altogether. So he was killed on the 29th day of October, 1966, in his television studio at Bethesda Naval Hospital.
In his office there, you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, office, and it was a working television studio. That was his place of work.
Okay. So what'd you think then?
Well, I thought, he was killed to get those pictures once I found out about those. And his wife told me that she was not allowed to see the autopsy. Now, this is 25 years. She was not allowed to have the autopsy. She asked for the ring. They told her they couldn't give her the ring because his hand was mangled. And when I finally got his autopsy, the complete autopsy, there was nothing wrong with his hands. And all I can figure is sometimes one of the ways of putting the secret information is to put it inside of a wedding band. And perhaps the location of those photos was inside that wedding band. That's perhaps. I don't know that. But I know he was killed. I assume he was killed by another Green Beret because I was asked to do it. There's no doubt about that.
Now, why don't you tell the folks where they can get a copy of your book before we forget?
They can go onto the website, expendableelite.com, or they can call telephone number 1-800.
Go ahead.
556-2012. And that's Trine Day Press who published the book. And you can ask them specifically for a signed copy, because I sent a box of signed copies to him.
Now, you have some information regarding the Kennedy assassination itself. Can you get into how you came across that information?
Well, during our training was one part of it. I think I told you already.
Right.
But then also I infiltrated the Boston area mafia when Master Sergeant Joe Hill and I were at Natick, Massachusetts, testing parachutes and testing parachute items there at Natick. And we stayed at the Holiday Inn Motel right next door to the Natick Laboratories, and Frank Sinatra was singing, and there happened to be a number of mafia people there listening. And one thing led to another, and became friends with the son of the mafia Don. And our third visit there, and our final testing visit, he took us to meet his father, had filet mignon in his father's house, and I asked the Don, I said, were you asked to be in on the Kennedy hit? And he said, yes, I was. He said, the company called me and asked me, this was before Dallas, but he said, we don't have no problems with the Kennedys in Massachusetts. And he, by the way, had offered Master Sergeant Joe Hill and I a job as a hit team working for him, because he knew that we had assassination training. And we rejected that because we were still in the Army.
And what else did he tell you then? What happened? What else did you learn about how Kennedy was killed?
Well, Dennis David can tell some things about the hearse. This is after the fact. Well, the main thing I know, and I think what you're leading to, is about Jimmy.
Exactly.
Files is the man that the CIA told us there was two men in the downtown Dallas area. One was on the grassy knoll. The other one was on the rooftop of the building that is next to the Texas Book Depository, the building that joins it. And Jimmy Files is a man that was on the grassy knoll. I communicate with him regularly.
And he's still alive right now?
Excuse me?
He's still alive?
Jimmy Files is alive. He's in Joliet Prison. And a gentleman named Bruce Brycheck, who's a friend of mine, who is writing the book that will tell about 50 years of my involvement in covert operations. It'll be called The Devious Elite, and Trindale will be publishing that also. He visits Jimmy at least once a week. And there'll be
in Joliet Prison in Illinois, correct?
Excuse me?
It's in Illinois, correct?
Joliet Penitentiary in Joliet, Illinois, just outside of Chicago.
What has Jimmy Files told you then?
Jimmy Files told me, he's telling the world, really, it'll be on the documentary film in November, next month.
Okay.
That is produced by Wim Dankbar of Holland. But he fired the shot that killed President Kennedy from the grassy knoll right through his right forehead, I believe he said. And I believe him. At first I didn't. I thought he was just some kind of a joker trying to take credit for doing something that maybe he liked to take credit for. And one of the things was his girlfriend, his fiancée, told me that he was in the White Star Mobile team. Well, the best friend I ever had 3 missions with the White Star Mobile team. It was a secret organization in Laos commanded by Colonel John Heinkes. Well, I met John Heinkes when he was a general. He visited my camp 3 times in Vietnam, and I knew him through Jerry, my friend, and I'd asked him, what kind of logistical support did you have for your troops in Laos? Logistics always, you need to have bullets and stuff. And he said, well, there were men from the 82nd Airborne Division that supported my team. Well, it just so happened Jimmy Files was assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division, and he went TDY to Laos to work with the White Star Mobile team, which the operatives themselves were all Green Berets, posing as civilians in Laos.
Wow. Now,
a lot of activity. One of the things that I did that made the Special Forces Association extremely mad at me, and why it had to do with the assassination of Martin Luther King, Dr. King, who happens to be a hero of mine. He was killed, and part of the way that they engineered the killing was to infiltrate the black movements, and one of the ways they did that was by having weapons to give to them, and I stopped that weapons flow in 1967, and in the 46th Special Forces in Thailand. I was sent there specifically to take care of a serious problem. They wouldn't even tell me what it was before I left. But I stopped the flow of guns going, I believe in all my heart. They're on the way to Detroit, Michigan. A black officer was handling, a black Green Beret officer, and I think they were going there to be a part of what William Pepper wrote in his book, The Plot to Kill Dr. Martin Luther King. Well, I gave Dr. William Pepper and his American counterpart, attorney, I gave them the complete 1-inch file on the CID investigation that I had investigated on that weapons movement in 1967. I gave that to them to use in that trial. That I don't think most people know that the trial in Memphis in the 90s found our government complicit to the degree of 70% in the killing of Dr. King. And there's 2 Green Beret units involved in the constant surveillance of Dr. King.
Okay, I've got to break in here in 2017. This is a great interview. And I'm not doing it justice here by, some of these people, like Lieutenant Colonel Dan Marvin, who realized what he was doing when he was really gung-ho, American flag, etc. He would do anything for his country, but when he realized the complicity and the deceit, then he changed his tune. And the story, I'm going to play a couple older interviews I did with him, which outlined a lot of his Vietnam experiences, and then also how he came to know the Lord. And it's just an incredible interview, and through this we became really good friends. And the incredible story about Dan, and I'll finish it up tomorrow and find some more clips that I did with him, was that he was so loyal to a South Vietnamese Colonel Van Diem, who helped saved his life when the CIA wanted to kill him in Vietnam. And it's an incredible story. And when Trine Day published it, and Trine Day is a publishing house that still exists. It's one of the few that allows these books to be published. But it took him a number of years to get this done, because no publisher wants to lose its business if they go against the Vatican and all of the government minions who are supporting this hypocrisy on us. So Dan finally gets his book published. Now, people are going, when you listen to this, you're going to say, well, is it true? Well, you got to go to a court case in Kansas City, a federal court case that Dan Marvin of the Pentagon filed against him when he wrote his book and told the stories about Vietnam and some other things. And boy, did it get interesting. He spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on legal fees. And guess what happens? The verdict was in his favor. The Pentagon lost. Did you read about it anywhere? No. Dan was vindicated even by a federal jury who listened to the evidence and stated that what Dan Marvin was saying was true. And when you hear the rest of these interviews, it should put a seal on the envelope that what I say about the Vatican and all of their minions is true. And what I say about orchestrations of war, what I say about the people in the White House allowing wars to continue when they shouldn't. This started in Vietnam. That war should have never gotten into it. But look at what we're involved in now in Iraq. This is going on for decades, and you think it's going to end? People, wake up. I said a long time ago, if we hadn't learned from Vietnam, will never learn, and people are getting dumber and dumber and dumber. They might as well just watch that movie Dumb and Dumber, because basically that is what most Americans are like when it comes to these subjects. They have no guts, no courage like that man did, like my friend Dan Marvin had, to finally realize that all his belief systems need to be changed. His belief not only in the government, but his belief in God. And he did that before he passed away. And I'm so happy for him. And I know the inside story, how he did, how he finally found God. And you know, I could tell you right now, but I want you to come back and listen for yourself. I want you to listen to his voice. I want you to hear the voice of truth in a man that I really learned to like and respect. He's a tough guy when he was young. In fact, it's so funny, he's from my hometown. But he grew up on the south side. And I am so happy I grew up on the north side of Chicago. If I grew up on the south side now, I wouldn't even be there. Over the weekend, did you hear about that? Something like 50 shootings and 11 dead in a weekend in Chicago? Give me a break. I know that city inside and out. And I know that they're turning it inside and out to create a race war, to create chaos in one of the greatest cities in the world, and it should be stopped. And it's only going to take people like him, like Dan Marvin. Are there any out there anymore? Is there anybody out there anymore that's going to stand up for what's right and what's true? Well, we're going to continue on this show exposing it. And how many people are you going to find now like him? And don't think the powers that be in the Vatican understand that. They are dumbing us down to a point where these kids that are walking around now with their heads digged in a cell phone or video games have no idea what's in store for this next 20, 30, 40 years. This is not going to be pretty. And I'm warning you right now. You people better get your act together quickly. Or as they say in the movies, sayonara, Yankee. See you tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.